Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host amazing guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and MarTech. I'm Jeremy Goldman, Senior Director of Client Briefings at eMarketer, and today we will be learning ways AI can inform marketing decisions and optimize campaigns. I am joined now by my special guest from Yext, Trent Ruffolo, Senior Product Marketing Manager. Hey, Trent.
Hey Jeremy, how you doing?
I am great. I'm going to be even better after this presentation. I am going to be taking notes. Trent has a great presentation for you all, and afterwards we will be opening it up for questions about what you've learned, any follow-ups. So just use the chat window to submit questions for the Q&A and to communicate with your peers. So with that, Trent, I'll kick it over to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Welcome everyone for joining. As Jeremy mentioned, my name is Trent Ruffolo. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at Yext. I've been working in the local search space for a little bit more than 8 years now. And I'm super excited to present this session because AI has been such a hot topic for the last couple of years, where the rise of AI has really impacted marketers in two main ways. First, AI has been layered into different search experiences. And these changes can not only be super exciting times for marketers, but they can also create a feeling of uncertainty because it can be very difficult to know how to navigate these changes and also optimize for these new AI-led search experiences. And second, marketers can now incorporate AI into their digital strategy by actually generating content. And with that productivity benefits comes some concerns and risks that we're going to go over and how to mitigate. And so in this webinar, we're going to talk about both use cases. And at the end, as Jeremy mentioned, we're going to save some time to answer as many questions as we can. So feel free to throw those questions in the chat along the way. So here, starting with AI and search, it's first, I think, important to understand just to know how we actually got here in the first place. And when we take a step back, it's interesting to see how search has evolved over the years. In the early to mid 1990s, we can see here on the left, we saw the first big breakthrough with things like search engines and crawlers. Examples there are like Yahoo. They made their debuts, and these search engines were keyword based. And what this means is that they would try to match users with web links that contain the same keywords that people use when they search. Then, about 10 years later, Google pioneered sort of this shift from keyword matching to being able to understand natural language intent and what users were actually searching for. And this shift was huge, and it drastically changed how brands created and structured their data, where creating a bunch of content that created or contained high target keywords was no longer good enough. Brands also needed to structure all of their information and establish different relationships between their data. So that way Google could better understand exactly what you offer and surface your brand in search results. Then about 10 years ago, we saw voice search come into the picture. This, certainly impacts how brands market to consumers because how someone talks to Alexa or Siri or Google Home is much different from how someone would search on those platforms like Google, Bing, or Apple. And now here we are with this new phase of search, where generative search that's led by AI, something that you guys all played around with, via ChatGPT, started out as a fun tool to ask it to do certain things like write a bedtime story about, potentially a carrot and three pigs, something random like that. Now that's that same technology and those same AI models that are powering this new era of generative search. And this new era of search became a reality on Bing. About a year and a half ago, they introduced what's called Copilot. And so this is an AI-powered assistant that relies on ChatGPT to produce generative answers. And this completely changed the game because it allows consumers to have a natural, more conversational-like experience as they search. So in this visual, you can see, you get the idea of the flow where someone can very easily shift back and forth between search and that conversational chat experience. Shortly thereafter, Google actually started using their AI model called Gemini to enhance their search experience. So Google has recently introduced a feature called AI overviews that sometimes will feature generative summaries at the top of the search engine results page. And the whole goal of AI overviews is to help you all as users find the most relevant information quickly and improve the quality of your experience. And so you can kind of get an idea and the difference of the quality of results here with this example where the AI overview is shown on the right-hand side in that featured image and the difference that it displays over there on the left. And then the most recent shakeup, some of you have probably heard in the AI world, is the introduction of Search GPT. And so this is a new cutting edge search engine that was actually developed by OpenAI. Currently in its prototype state, this certainly has some potential to generate a lot of adoption from consumers and could have, again, another impact on how you as business owners and marketers think about your search strategy. One example there is Search GPT at the moment, doesn't have any ads. So you can't buy your way to search results, which means you wouldn't be able to rely on paid search, which of course just levels up the importance of your organic search strategy. So over the last few decades, SEO, what we know of it, is sort of the name of the game for marketers. But now with the rise of these different AI-powered search experiences, there's a new concept of optimizing for generative experiences. And this is known as generative engine optimization, or similarly, like SEO, it's called GEO. So you might be asking, well, how is this different from SEO? Well, at the end of the day, it's the best quality content that is still going to win in both scenarios. But there is a key difference that impacts how you should think about creating and then, of course, optimizing your content. On the one hand, SEO optimizes content for traditional search engine formats and increasing ranks of organic links. On the other hand, GEO, the experience is much different. They're looking to craft content that can easily be parsed and utilized by AI. And this includes, different things like structured data and formats that are much more friendly to natural language processing. So given this difference, how do you actually develop a strategy that optimizes for both? Because yes, GEO is certainly on the rise. We're seeing these generative experiences become more prevalent, but SEO isn't going anywhere, certainly not anytime soon. So step one to prioritize is an optimized web content strategy. And likely something I imagine is table stakes, something that you all are already doing because it's such a critical piece to performing in search today. But the rise of these generative experiences has even heightened the importance of these optimized first-party experiences. And that's because you can see a feature like AI overviews, it primarily sources first-party content. So just an example in the image that you can see there. So when thinking about how to create an optimized web content strategy, remember, SEO isn't going anywhere. So all of those traditional tactics of generating content around your target keywords and ensuring different technical capabilities are met are super important for appearing and ranking in search. But again, the differences in how SEO varies from AI-led experiences, it's now more important than ever to be super data-driven. And what I mean by that is because the format of a blog or a web page, or even the copy that you actually draft, could have varying results on these different experiences. So this is certainly an opportunity to test out new things. For example, maybe a format of a how-to or bulleted list could actually have a better chance of showing up in AI instead of a traditional straight long form copy. So some things there to certainly analyze and look at from your perspective. Are there different varying results on different traditional search experiences as well as these AI-led ones as well? So step number two, creating an effective strategy, is incorporating a reputation management solution. We know that managing reviews can be very, very complex and super time intensive, but the benefits of doing so could certainly be enormous and significantly impactful to your business. And so I want to talk about quickly why that is. And the reason is that ratings and reviews have such a big impact on where and how brands show up in search. So take this example search that I recently did. When you search on Google for something like best pizza in Chicago, not only does Google, as you can see here, it automatically pre-filters to only show restaurants that are 4 stars and above, but they also feature what are called review justifications. And so you can kind of see those snippets there that I called out, but these are featured review snippets from the content in the review itself, and these contain the same keywords that were used in the search query. So in this example here, because I searched for best pizza, we can see Google's featuring that review content that says best pizza ever, best pizza in Chicago, some of the best pizza anywhere. And then on top of that, brands that publish what's called first-party content, and of course, marking those up with the correct schema can further differentiate themselves in search results. So here in this image, you can see Google is featuring the review count and also the average rating directly at the top of the search engine results page for this financial representative. These are reviews that this insurance agent solicited and then published directly on their local website. And so when you're thinking about what are the little things that we could be doing to differentiate ourselves, again, in a very crowded market space, something like this can help your brand stand out in search results and just drive more traffic to your website. How to implement a reputation management strategy. I know there's usually a lot of question marks and questions that we get around this in general. So I want to talk about kind of the high level impact things that you can do because reputation management strategy could seem very daunting. You may not know where to begin or even how to start prioritizing. So arguably what we want to talk about here are the most impactful things that you can do, especially if you're just starting out. First is to start responding to reviews. Super impactful, something that anyone can do. And businesses with a higher average rating are positioned better to succeed in search. So one of the things that you can do to actually increase your average rating is, again, to respond to reviews. We have a bunch of customer data we were able to analyze, and what we're able to see is that the customers that respond to more reviews are rated more than a half a star higher than businesses that don't respond at all. So a great opportunity there if you're not taking advantage of this already. Next, you should start to ask for customer reviews. The reason there is that happy customers are just more likely to leave you a review simply when you ask them to. And then you can, of course, publish these more positive reviews on your website to help sites like Google index your content and stand out more in search results. Step number 3 here, what we're going to get into is how to incorporate a well-managed listing strategy, how to let this serve as the foundation of your digital presence. And in this new era of AI-led search, having a well-managed listing strategy can help your brand succeed and just further differentiate from your competition. So some of you might be asking, well, what does a good listing strategy actually look like? Well, first and foremost, you'll want to make sure you're managing your listings on all the big sites, the ones that we are very, very familiar with, places like Google, Facebook, Bing, Apple Maps. You want to make sure you're not only managing these listings, but also filling out your data as much as possible. The more these search engines know about your brand, the better your chances are of showing up in search. And we have some data to back that up, again, with a very large customer base that we work with. Once your data is complete and actively being managed, you want to make sure that you're actually frequently updating your listings. And the reason behind that is because consistent updates keeps your data fresh and it sends out more trustworthy signals to sites like Google, where adding a new photo or updating your hours during the holidays, if they do in fact change, these are great opportunities to frequently update your listings and continue to send those strong, trustworthy signals. And then lastly, it's really important to ensure consistency across your listings. When I say consistency, I don't just mean the big sites like the ones we just listed, Google, Facebook, Bing, and Yelp, but also all of the smaller ones that may not be generating as much direct traffic for your business. And so I want to get into, why that's the case and highlight the importance of consistency. And to do that, we actually ran a study about 6 months ago. And we wanted to see, if the data would support that more consistency across your listings translates to better performance in search. And specifically what we looked at is over 600,000 business locations. And these were locations that were live on our listings product for at least a year. The reason why we analyzed these locations after a year is because it takes time to see a lot of those SEO benefits. And then from there, we measured how many clicks each location was getting on Google. So this chart on the right-hand side here, how you can read it, each dot will represent an individual business location that we analyzed. And the further to the right you go, the more publishers that location was synced to, which means the more consistent their listings were. And then the further up that dot goes just indicates the better it performed on Google. And specifically, we looked at the number of website clicks that business was getting specifically from Google. And these were the results of that study. So for the first time ever, we now have data to back up the claim that consistency across your listings impacts actually how you perform on Google. So you can see the concentration of dots that are performing the best on Google, meaning they're all the way at the top. These are all on the right side of the chart, minus those handful of outliers to the left. There are virtually no locations on that left-hand side that are performing well on a comparatively. So if it was only Google that mattered, right? This is what the chart in that study would look like. There would be no difference in your performance on Google because everyone is managing and optimized on Google. Obviously, this is not what that chart shows, and certainly not the case here. And in fact, it's telling us the exact opposite. So in order to optimize your performance on Google, it's really, really important to manage your listings on more of these sites besides just the big ones. And again, this analysis that we're looking at here, this is all website traffic that is generated specifically from Google. This is not accumulated traffic from any other site. So a lot of you are probably asking, well, why are these results the way they are? What is it that consistency has to do? And why does it correlate to better performance on Google? yes, that information is going to have consistent and accurate information, but a lot of the other ones that you're neglecting are eventually going to have missing or some inaccurate information. And so what this does from Google's perspective is it gives a less trustworthy signal because they're indexing exactly how your information is represented all across the web. Whereas when you have a much higher percentage of the publishers being managed, your listings will be consistent and accurate in a lot more places. And what it does is it gives off a signal that is much more trustworthy and then improves your chances to show up on Google. The way I like to think about it is it's the same as asking 10 people for directions. If you get the exact same answer 10 times, you're certainly going to feel much more confident that the answer you just received is correct. Well, when you get conflicting answers, just like what you saw on the previous slide, you're probably less confident and don't know which answer is correct or which one you should trust. Well, sites like Google operate the exact same way, and they want to feel confident that the information they are delivering to their consumers is the most accurate and up to date. So we know with that, with that study, we're able to provide some evidence, that syncing your listings to more publishers, both big and small, correlates to better performance on Google. But what about, the focus of this webinar around AI-led search? Well, you might think that Gemini, which is Google's AI model, only looks at data on Google, or, similarly, Copilot would only source information from Bing, but that's actually not the case at all either. So when ChatGPT is prompted to cite its sources, after this example here of asking questions about a financial representative, it doesn't reference information from big publishers like Google, Facebook, Bing, or Apple. Instead, it cites sources from YP or Local Mint. And I'm sure many of you aren't going to these sites to find information, but a lot of these large language models do. And so this means if you're not actively managing your information more broadly and consistently, these AI-led models like Gemini and ChatGPT and soon to be others, they could present consumers with either inaccurate information, or worse, they may not surface your information at all. So to kind of double click here and show you another example of the impact of a lot of these longer tail sites and the smaller ones that don't generate as much direct traffic, we actually went and asked a bunch of these large language models where they get their local business information from. And some of the top sources that they featured included numerous online directories, social platforms, and online review sites. And yes, they list off some publishers. But when we asked this large language model to be more specific about which directories it uses as a follow-up question, as you expect, yes, they listed off Google, Bing, Yelp, and a few others. But they also specifically called out smaller and less prominent sites like Merchant Circle, Insider Pages, City Search, Hot Frog, and Super Pages. And looks like there's about 20 or so others that, again, most people probably have never even heard of before. And so, in fact, we ran this exercise across every, major AI model, and we got the exact same results. So if you are curious in that analysis, there's a blog that we wrote, where do Google, Gemini, ChatGPT, and other AI models get local business information from? So certainly check that out. But if you need any more confirmation and evidence that these smaller sites are crawled and sourced by AI and large language models, the CEO and founder of Locally is quoted, confirming that ChatGPT does in fact scrape their site for information. So if I can leave anything here, hopefully with enough evidence and backing, is that even if you're not getting a lot of traffic from these sites directly, they're still so important for SEO purposes, as we saw with that study, but also when it comes to setting up your brand for success in these new up and coming AI-powered search experiences. So now that we've talked about AI in search, we're going to discuss another use case in AI, and this is around marketers, the concept of using generative content and how to take advantage of it. So when we look at the search landscape and how it's evolved, it grows increasingly complex. Today, consumers are interacting with your brand across countless different digital channels, but they have the same expectations for high quality and consistent content, no matter where they're going and engaging with your brand online. And what this does is it puts a tremendous strain on your content teams who are responsible for creating and managing and then delivering this content to all of your customers everywhere that they need it. And this is going on an ongoing basis. Well, now thanks to AI, you can generate and publish content at a much faster rate, where, whether it's writing blogs or generating FAQs or writing business descriptions that you can publish across your listings or your location pages, or even drafting website copy itself. There are a number of other examples that you can see here. The advancements made with AI have enabled marketers to create better, quality content much faster than they could before. And this unlocks massive potential, from productivity perspective and allows your teams to work on then more strategic initiatives. But using generative content also presents some risks. AI generated content may not live up to your accuracy or even your quality standards. And that's because of its ability to hallucinate and sometimes provide false information, or potentially sometimes it could use a different tone or a voice that would fall outside of your brand guidelines. And these are all serious and legitimate concerns that marketers need to be aware of before they just go out and start using AI to generate content. These should not be viewed as roadblocks, but just understanding them and putting the right processes and guardrails in place can be super effective. So what do those look like? Well, how to leverage generative AI while mitigating those risks. First thing is it helps to have AI layered into whatever central source that you're using to currently create and update content, as opposed to just throwing prompts and stuff into ChatGPT directly. This helps ensure that your content that you are creating is more accurate because the AI model is going off of the data that you already have and that you give it, and therefore has less of a tendency to hallucinate. Next, you'll want to think about what your strategy is and to follow it consistently. This is the only way that you're going to be able to truly generate content at scale. And then lastly, it's important to keep humans at the center of all generated content, just so that way all the content is approved or it's edited before it actually gets published to the web. So kind of the main takeaway here is having all the right tools and the workflows that fit within your business system can allow you to leverage generative content while also mitigating any risks that are associated with it. And then lastly here on this topic of generative AI, there's a very popular use case using this feature and functionality in the form of responding to reviews. So to show you the potential impact of this feature, I want to first share why responding to reviews is so important. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but reviews are a critical part of the customer journey. Every single person reads reviews, if not all. I'm sure many of you on this call can relate, but 94% of customers say that reviews have actually led them to avoid a business. So to improve your online reputation and improve that brand trust, one tactic that you can use is to respond to reviews. And the data shows that the more reviews you respond to, the better. Where brands that respond to at least 75% of their reviews are rated more than half a star higher. I believe we talked about this a little bit earlier, but that half a star increase can not only impact the perception of your business from people who are searching and engaging with your brand, but it can also have a big impact on where you show up in search. And that's because search engines rely on ratings and reviews to help determine how to rank businesses in search. So we're kind of double clicking into what we talked about earlier, but sites like Google will look at a number of factors, including how many reviews you have, the quality of reviews, which is your star rating, how recent your reviews are, the response rate, as well as the diversity of your review sources as well. Because again, they're looking all across the web. So with reviews having such a big impact, both on how customers perceive your brand, but also on where you show up in search, managing and responding to customer reviews, this presents a great opportunity to boost your brand's reputation and drive additional revenue through enhanced, search visibility. The main challenge that you're all, probably wondering is dealing with the amount of time and effort that is required to effectively respond to reviews. It can take time to craft a thoughtful, what we like to call an empathetic reply, certainly to your unhappy customers. And when you multiply that process by hundreds or even thousands of reviews, depending on the number of locations that, you're responsible for managing, responding to reviews can seem like that daunting task. But now using that same technology to generate content, AI allows you to craft authentic responses to reviews. And you can do this in a fraction of the time that it would take to respond manually. And not only can you provide detailed instructions, so that way the AI model knows exactly how to respond, what tone to use, but having this technology layered into where you actually store and manage all of your location information will allow you to optimize for more localized content as well. And then as is the case with all generated content, it's super important to have humans at the center of all this, just so that way no responses are automatically posted without being approved or seen or edited by the right people. And this is where a powerful suggestions workflow that works within your organization can certainly come in handy. So with that, we have a few takeaways here to conclude us, and before we jump over to the questions and answers section. So what can we leave you all with? Well, first, understanding how SEO varies from GEO, the similarities that they share, but also understanding what those differences are, can help you think about developing a search strategy. Second, consistency across sites is key. That analysis that we showed certainly supports consistency across your listing strongly correlates to better SEO and, of course, better positions your brand for success in this wave of AI. And on the other side of AI, what we just talked about, using generative content to create high quality content much, much faster is a powerful tool you all should leverage, but of course, putting the certain processes and guardrails in place to mitigate any risks that are associated with it. So with that, I think we had a bunch of questions that come in. Super excited to go through all these, but I will hand it to Jeremy real quick to line those up.
Yeah, Trent, thank you so much for sharing those great insights. I mean, one thing that struck me as you were presenting was the importance of consistency in building a winning search strategy, which I think is obviously one thing that's just a hallmark of success, in this area. So you are correct, by the way. We did get quite a few questions, so let's get straight to our Q&A. First question about AI overviews. Can you tell us how often does Google present an AI overview and what types of searches generate an AI overview?
Great question. So I will say that AI overviews have declined in the amount that they are surfaced in search results since the first feature was first deployed. I want to say, based on like a search engine journal article, that right now though that feature is showcased anywhere between like 5 and 7% of the search queries, so somewhere in that range. The types of businesses that tend to generate an AI overview more than others are specifically within healthcare. So if you were to go and play around with Google and try your own searches, oftentimes asking more healthcare related questions are going to trigger an AI overview. So things around like, what are the symptoms of a concussion, or how do I treat this? You'll notice those types of searches tend to produce an AI overview more than a lot of the other industries out there today. But the frequency in which they are showcases is always changing on a month to month, week to week basis, something we're monitoring. But right now, that's kind of the frequency in which they're being showcased in search.
Great. We have a question about this is interesting. How are Gen AI based recommendations different from what we have had for a long time? Isn't LLM based Gen AI all about creating, like generating new content combined with predictive results?
Yeah, so I believe the question is around how a large language model would surface results and how that might differ from a traditional search engine and the formats that are accustomed there. If I'm
Hmm.
interpreting the
Yeah,
question,
that's the
hopefully.
way I take it too. Yeah.
Okay, cool. As long as we're on the same page there. Yeah. This is kind of this falls back to the main difference between what we showed in the Venn diagram sort of slide a little bit earlier. There's a lot of similarities between SEO and generative AI and what these large language models are doing. There's consistencies with quality content, ensuring great consumer experiences, technical capabilities that are being met, but differences in how they surface that information to consumers is kind of the big difference there, where search engines like Google and traditional formats are trying to surface different links, or ranking is sort of the factor there, whereas you can think of a generative experience optimizing for more conversational or natural language experiences. So they will summarize sort of different sources and then sort of combine those to produce a generative result, which is much different than a lot of the experiences that we're used to today, whether that's in the local map pack or organic results for products and services page, or stuff like that. So it's just kind of the formats and how that information gets delivered is how it sort of impacts as a marketer to think about how you actually create content and what your digital strategy should look like.
That makes sense. One question that we had this is, I think, an interesting one that maybe I can build on a little bit. Why were website clicks the metric analyzed in the Yext study that you showed? And maybe I can just also add, and what are other, key metrics that clients are paying most attention to?
Great question. Yeah, so I guess I can break down that question in a few different ways. The reasoning behind website clicks being the primary metric tracked and analyzed is because that is typically the primary metric that a lot of marketers care about. It's driving people to their website. Oftentimes there are engagements or engagement metrics on a listing, such as phone calls, and those are oftentimes for some businesses things that you're trying to avoid or decrease. Whereas consistently across the board, businesses are typically trying to drive as much traffic to their website as possible. So it's a pretty common variable that we could assume, is a consistent type of goal that businesses are trying to strive for. Other types of metrics that are important are all things that as a brand you would qualify as a conversion. So some brands might be really interested in the clicks to driving directions because they signify that as a purchase and someone coming to their store, or there might be place order buttons or reservation buttons on listings, for example. And of course, we're not even talking about first party experiences where you can customize those CTAs, but really the value is going to be around what you as a brand value a conversion, and of course, depending on different industries, that's going to vary depending on what that click type is. But across the board, I would be remiss to think that most businesses are not trying to drive more traffic to their website. So that was the consistent metric that we used in the study.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And there's another question a little bit towards your talk track. You talked a little bit about it helps to have AI layered into your central source, where you currently create and update content as opposed to just using a tool like ChatGPT directly. So, what's
Mhm.
an example of a central source to be leveraged by AI? Maybe you can talk a little bit more about what's best practice there.
Certainly, yeah. The central source could be exactly where you are, managing and updating, a lot of location information. So things within like a content management system, or if you have that infused into how you are delivering everything within your content management system to your listings, or even having that consolidated to update information across your first party experiences like pages. So whatever that consolidated source, if there is one, really helps to have that AI layered in there and incorporated into that platform, just because you're able to, what we talked about is, better quality with, more accurate information being generated. You have a less of a tendency for the AI model to actually hallucinate and provide false information. But then, of course, there's sort of the ability to optimize for all of the local content that you have stored and managed today for either could be your locations. If you're a bank, it could be your financial professionals or ATMs, and very similarly within like healthcare, there could be providers or clinics or any of that location type of information that you're managing and structuring. Having AI as part of that is beneficial for a few different reasons there.
How about, I thought this was really interesting, and I know it's a little further afield from what we were talking about today, but obviously, Google being a major place that is aggregating and creating, a new generative interface, but there are all these other ones, right, that are popping up everywhere. So what's your perspective on, Amazon has Rufus, Ask Instacart, Walmart's new search AI, a new AI search experience? How does a marketer try to essentially stay abreast of all those different interfaces and understand how their, content and their listings are going to be surfaced by tools like that?
It's a lot. Yeah, I think basically the kind of takeaway and the root of that question is that the search landscape has become so much more fragmented than what it used to be. Yes, Google is the very popular search engine that a lot of people use, whether it's to start their search journey or ask questions throughout. But there's a lot of other places, and these different channels seem to keep popping up on almost a daily basis. So yes, it can be super difficult for marketers to not only stay on top of all these things, but understand how to deliver your data there and in a super effective way. And then on top of that, all of these different AI models and all these different large language models are also looking at other digital channels to help inform their data set. So how they surface information might be pulled from another site or another source. So the search landscape has become so much more fragmented. but also the need to manage your information in more places has just become much more complex. And it's become super difficult for marketers to be able to do this at scale and keep up with all those changes.
So I had an interesting one that I think you part answered, but I think it's good to build on. When it comes to making updates to listings, should let's say you have a number of different locations, your company, should you make a bunch of consistent small updates or one big update once a year? And it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong, just keeping consistent with those updates and maybe doing an audit just to ensure that you have accuracy. Do that on a rolling basis, but try to, when you have the new information, try to get that in there, right?
Yeah, no, Jeremy, you're wrong. No, I'm kidding. No, you're spot on there. Yeah, so between the two, there's definitely a recommendation to make consistent updates as opposed to maybe optimizing for one big update, once or even a few times a year. It's those small, incremental, consistent updates that is rejuvenating and sending fresh, up to date data to all of these different search engines. So that is definitely the recommended strategy there between the two.
And does Google index review responses or just review content?
Review responses or review content? Oh, great question. So at the moment, we've heard from Google that at the moment they only index review content. The words that you use when you respond to review at the moment do not get indexed by Google. Is there a chance that could change? Certainly, but as of right now, they have said that they do not index the content in the response. It's only the content that the reviewer left.
This is an interesting question, also following up on something that we were talking about before, right? We were talking about website clicks. But do you have a perspective? And I think that our coverage actually covers this quite a bit, with AI results popping up on first, for search results. And then often there's not necessarily a link to click through to. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. How should marketers approach SEO and the traditional metric of measuring success based off of site visits, right? Because you might get a lot more brand awareness than ever before because you've optimized for generative search. But what if you're not getting those same clicks?
Great question. And yeah, to kind of clarify the point here is that when an AI model produces a generative result, it could steer consumers and incentivize them into what's called like a zero party click, where they don't need to click on your website to go find the information, because they're getting the summarized answer in a much more structured format where they don't need to go and click to your website. And so now that that person did not have to navigate to the website, marketers, could and likely will notice, maybe reductions in their website traffic. And so these are just changes that you as marketers should just monitor and be aware of. Something actually that's interesting being introduced the same day that OpenAI announced their prototype of Search GPT is Bing is actually updating their search experience to both optimize for consumer experiences, but also not to incentivize people in these zero party clicks. So they're actually trying to optimize for both. There's sort of a blog post that they put out there about that. But yes, to the root of the question, there are certainly changes to search experiences that could impact kind of the results and how you evaluate success. But there are these experiences that vary across different sites. So it's just something to monitor and be aware of. And one of the many things to try and stay on top of as these search engines change and do their best to optimize their search experiences and knowing the impacts for you as marketers.
Okay, and then we have, I think, probably time for one more. So, how do you ensure that you have a process for how to, you touched on this a bit, how to use humans to edit and oversee Gen AI content? So you're not just cutting and pasting, right? But you have that human in the loop in order to oversee and, get rid of hallucinations, put things in brand voice, things like that.
Yeah, honestly, the best way to do that is to have some sort of tool where it's built in, where you can provide the AI model with certain instructions or prompts, if you will, of how you want it to handle certain situations, how you want it to respond, providing your brand guidelines, the instructions you want it to use when, if we're thinking about, how to respond to a review. I want you to use this tone when a negative review comes in, but a positive review, you can be more friendly. These are all instructions and prompts that you can have built in. So there are different tools out there that make that process much easier for you, as well as kind of the workflows and the flexibility that would fit within your business. And every business is different. There's certain teams that need to see certain things or approve certain things, or things need to get escalated if a certain word is used, or a certain piece of content needs to go through this individual before it goes out there on the web. So there's a lot of flexibility that you're going to want to look at to ensure that whatever tools or softwares are out there, that they're able to meet sort of the flexibility of your workflows and the suggestions that you can have people approve or edit or assign to different people at any point in time. So having things like that built in is kind of the best way to go, I would say. Otherwise, it's a much more manual, throwing stuff into a model itself and trying to, obviously do that at scale is not, not an effective way. But again, that's kind of the recommended approach there. If there's any software or tools that can help you do that.
Makes a lot of sense. Have a sustainable process there. Man, this so we got through a lot of great questions here. Trent, thank you so much for this great content and answering all these questions from our audience. We really appreciate it. And before we wrap up, let me take a moment to tell you about eMarketer's media channels. First off, visit eMarketer.com to register for our upcoming live analyst and tech talk webinars and sign up for our newsletters as well. They are great. Don't forget to tune into Behind the Numbers, eMarketer's daily podcast, which you can find anywhere you listen to podcasts. Keep an eye on your email for the link to today's playback. And of course, feel free to contact us if you have any other questions. And thank you all for your time. And thanks again to Trent, the team at Yext, and our eMarketer studio team behind the scenes for making this webinar possible. We will see you all on the next Tech Talk.